Hey there, story lovers. I may just be your friendly neighborhood storyteller, but before we embark on today's adventure, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Let's make this journey unforgettable together. Welcome to today's stories. Before we dive in, I want to share a brief disclaimer. Disclaimer: the content presented in this video is purely for entertainment purposes. The theories and stories discussed are speculative and not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get started. The house was everything we had ever dreamed of. It was tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, far from the city noise, surrounded by trees and a huge backyard where the kids could play. It felt like a fresh start, something our family desperately needed. We walked through the front door, and everything seemed perfect. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, making the rooms feel warm and inviting. It was almost too good to be true. My wife Sarah kept saying how peaceful it felt. Even the kids, who usually ran wild, were unusually calm. It felt like this house was meant for us. But from the very first night, something felt off. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just small things that you could easily ignore. The first night, I was lying in bed when I thought I heard something, like a soft murmur. I figured it was just the wind. But it happened again the next night. This time it was more distinct, like a whisper, but I couldn't make out any words. It was as if the walls were talking. I mentioned it to Sarah, but she brushed it off, saying old houses make noises. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I felt something strange lurking in this place. The whispers were so faint, they could have easily been mistaken for creaks in the wood or the hum of the air conditioning. But no, this was different. There was a pattern, like someone was actually trying to speak, but too quietly to be heard. The thing was, I was the only one hearing them. It was always late at night, when the house was silent and still. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks on me, but the feeling that something wasn't right wouldn't go away. As the days passed, the whispers didn't just stay faint, they grew louder. It wasn't all at once, though. At first, it was like someone was standing just a little closer, talking just a bit more clearly. It still didn't make sense, like a jumble of words just out of reach. But then, one night, I heard it. A name. Emily. It wasn't a name that belonged to any of us, but it was so clear, it stopped me in my tracks. I stayed up that night, listening, and every time I thought I was about to drift off, I'd hear that name again. Emily. It was unsettling, but I couldn't quite tell Sarah yet. I didn't want to worry her. The whispers started getting under my skin, though. They weren't just random noises anymore. They felt directed, like the house was trying to tell me something. It wasn't long before they got more specific. Names, dates, even sounds of sobbing or muffled screams. It was as if the walls were crying out, replaying the horrors of something terrible that happened long ago. One night, I swore I heard the sound of someone gasping for breath, like they were struggling, fighting to survive. I couldn't sleep after that. At this point, it wasn't just me who was affected. Sarah noticed my sleepless nights, and the kids, well, they started to change too. Our daughter Lily wouldn't go to bed without the lights on. Our son Sam kept waking up screaming, saying he saw shadows in his room. Sarah blamed it on the stress of the move, but deep down I knew it was the house. We started arguing more than we ever had before. Small things turned into big fights, like the tension in the house was working against us. It was like the whispers were seeping into our heads, pushing us apart. I could see Sarah trying to stay calm, but the strain was showing. She was starting to hear things too, although she didn't want to admit it. One night, she told me she heard a woman's voice crying softly in the living room, but when she went to check, no one was there. That's when I knew it wasn't just me. Whatever this house was hiding, it wasn't staying hidden much longer. And the worst part? I had a feeling it was only going to get worse. One night, everything escalated. The whispers turned into loud thuds, like someone was banging on the walls, demanding to be heard. It felt as if the house itself was alive, responding to our fear. I woke up to the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. My heart raced as I rushed to the living room, where the couch was now tilted at an odd angle. I could feel the air thick with tension, almost electric, like a storm was about to hit. I turned to Sarah, and her eyes were wide with fear. Then, I saw it. A shadow darting past the hallway, too quick for me to comprehend. My instincts kicked in, and I ran after it, calling out for the kids to stay put. But the deeper I went into the house, the more disoriented I felt. The walls seemed to twist and bend, making the hallways feel longer and darker. I heard Sam crying out from his room, and that spurred me on. As I reached his door, it swung open on its own, revealing nothing but darkness. That's when the walls began to crack. It wasn't just superficial. Pieces of plaster started to crumble and fall like rain. It was as if the house was shedding its skin, revealing something horrific underneath. Panic set in. I rushed to gather the kids, but before I could, Sarah screamed from the living room. I dashed back to find her staring at the corner, where a ghostly figure stood, flickering in and out of sight. It was a woman, her face twisted in anguish. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. In the chaos, we managed to calm the kids down, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. Just then, I noticed a slight opening in the wall behind the bookshelf, a hidden door. My heart raced as we pushed the shelf aside, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Together, we gathered our courage and descended. The air grew colder with every step, and the whispers grew louder, as if they were beckoning us to go deeper. At the bottom, we found a small room filled with dust and forgotten memories. In the center lay an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. I opened it, and my hands trembled as I read about the house's dark past. Stories of sorrow, loss, and a family that had once lived here, torn apart by tragedy. It spoke of curses, of a spirit trapped in the house, seeking revenge on any family that dared to call it home. My heart sank as I realized we were not the first to suffer here, and the weight of their pain was still lingering, desperate to be released. As we stood there, the weight of the journal's words pressed heavily on us. I glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were filled with a mix of terror and determination. The kids clung to us, sensing the danger that filled the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The whispers grew louder, almost angry now, demanding to be acknowledged. They spoke of a curse, and I realized that we were in the very center of it all. We needed to escape, to break free from this nightmare. But how could we leave when the walls felt like they were closing in? Just then, the temperature dropped dramatically, and I could see our breaths hanging in the air. The ghostly figure of the woman reappeared, her face twisted in anguish. I could hear her sobs over the cacophony of whispers, and it felt as if she was warning us of our impending doom. Suddenly, the room began to shake, and the walls trembled as if the house was alive, fighting to keep us trapped inside. The journal slipped from my hands and floated into the air, pages turning wildly as if an unseen force was desperate to tell its story. I felt panic rise within me, and I knew we had to make a choice: stay and confront whatever darkness resided in this cursed home, or run and risk it all. As we stood there, hearts racing and minds racing faster, I couldn't help but wonder if we were doomed to repeat the tragic fate of those who had come before us. Would we become another family lost to this house, swallowed by its dark secrets? Or could we break the cycle and escape its grasp? The answers felt just out of reach, and as the shadows closed in around us, the only thing I knew for certain was that the true horror was only beginning.